started in another minute or so. So hold on for just a few more seconds, and we'll give a few more people an opportunity to log on here. Well, while we're sitting here waiting to start, I would like to ask a question. If you all can hear me and see me okay, just raise your hand. One's good enough. That's great. Thank you. We got a few of them. Appreciate it. Oh, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We've got several people online here. We'll just get going. My name is Charles Owen, as I mentioned, from Paladin. Been with Paladin for about 9 years now. I manage development, business development, business alliances, and so on. Today's webinar is on a topic that we just can't seem to talk enough about. We've got a few webinars on it already. This is going to be a little different slant on this particular webinar on suggested order. It's going to just really simplify the process. I know that we have inventory, managing inventory control, I think is the title, and part 1, part 2, and part 3. All together, it's about an hour and a half of presentation and webinar. And I just want to make it real simple. This is going to be a quick webinar. I'm going to actually reference a lot of online materials and things. But I think it's also important to know that this webinar will be recorded, and you will be able to see it at the end or beginning tomorrow and the following day. So it will be posted on the client portal site. So you'll be able to reference this. And if I go too fast or don't cover something, then please raise your hand and send in a text message. I've got Chad here is assisting me today, so he will be able to answer the questions as we're talking. So let's start with slide 1 and look at the agenda. So the first thing we're going to go over are the benefits of using suggested ordering. I can't stress enough how important it is to leverage this feature in Paladin. It is everything in Paladin. It is the reason that you justified buying a retail technology system for your store, and it can really help you on a return on investment. So we'll talk about all those benefits. We'll also show you just a 1, 2, 3 how to get started, real quick, down and dirty. We can start today. You can actually start using suggested ordering beginning today. It's that simple. I'm not talking about doing your entire store in one day, but you can pick a section and do it day by day. Next, I'll go over all the online resources you have to leverage, and then we'll go into a brief demonstration. So what are some of the benefits? Well, clear and simple, looking at the bottom bullet here, provides a high return on investment and justification for your Paladin point of sale product. This is where you get the biggest return on investment for this retail solution. It will help you, starting from the top bullet here, determine the optimal stocking supply. That is like super, super important. One of the toughest challenges today with stores is managing their inventory, especially when you have 10 to 20 to 30,000 unique items in your store. Oh my gosh, that's just unfathomable to think that you can do that manually. However, there are several hundreds, if not thousands, of stores that still do it manually. And the optimal stocking supply will help you reduce those products out and product outs, right? So you won't run out of product as often. The worst thing you can have happen is a customer come into your store, walk over to an aisle, have their list of things to purchase, and the first couple of things they look at to buy are out of stock. What are they going to do? They're going to turn around, either leave the full shopping cart there and take their list, or just turn around and walk out. Either way is not a good scenario. You are losing a customer. So really what we say about Paladin is you can get higher turns with Paladin. That's true if you use suggested ordering. That's the only way you're going to accomplish that. Higher turns come from less product outs, right? You get more customers coming to your store. You're the first store on their stop because you always have the products that they need. That is detriment to success in your store. Reduces inventory investment in overstock items. So this is getting rid of all those items that don't turn, all those non-performers we call them. And again, this happens through the magic of the technology that we're using to determine the optimal stocking supply, right? We will get into this a little bit more in detail, but these are the main advantages and benefits of using suggested ordering. All right, next slide. So how do we get started? I said it was going to be short and simple, and here it is. So first thing that you do, now it's not a prerequisite that you have an RF gun or an RF terminal. Radio frequency is what that stands for, but it does help you tremendously. If you can count a small section of your store, just pick a department or even just a small 4-foot section, count that section. Using the gun makes it really simple because you can also, and it's required, you need to assign a location code. Now you can do that with the RF gun. When you log into the RF gun and ask you which location are you in, and you just select the location. That location has to be pre-input into Paladin, so you have to already have it in there for it to recognize it. But then every item you scan in that particular section, it's going to assign that location code. That's the most important thing that you can do when you start using suggested ordering at a small section at a time, because you're going to have to identify those items in that area that you counted so that you can run a suggested order report based on a location code or a range of location codes. So setting up location codes and identifying location codes is very important. I always recommend when you put location codes in, leave a big spread between. For example, when you assign an ID, the very first location code that you have, maybe it's yard items, and you create that as number 1 ID. Right. The next ID you're going to start might be, might be back aisle or whatever it might be, and that's going to be starting with number 5 or 10. So you're going to leave a lot of room in between those IDs so you can add other IDs, because the benefit of signing location codes and using this kind of going through your store systematically from one side of the store to the next is that you can put a range of location codes in. As long as that range falls within that number range, it's going to go ahead and order for those items. I don't know if I articulated that good enough, but I hope you understand what we're trying to accomplish here. We put in location codes based on ID. Those ID ranges need to follow through from like the left side of an aisle all the way down to the end of the aisle, and just make those location codes numeric so they fall within that range. All right. Next, you run your suggested order report, right? Now, when you run a suggested order report, and I'll show you this during the demonstration, you can identify how many stocking days you want that product on your shelf, and based on the customer demand and the prior sales, it's going to go ahead and do some predictive analytics as to what it needs to fulfill that product for your customers over that period of time. It's just depth. How much depth do you want of stock? That's how I really say it. It's just how many days worth of stock do you want to have on your shelf. Now, if you get a truck once a week, Normally, a lot of people they'll jump to 10 days or 14 days or something like that, so they have a little cushion. They tend to, you tend to overstock a little bit versus understock, but it's up to you. You can go right to 7 days, or you can bump it up. It depends on what's in your budget for that week. And that's really the beauty of using suggested order report, is you can tune it based on your tolerance and budget for the next several days. Once you generate this suggested order report, now you need to clean up the anomalies, if you have any. And generally, there are lots of anomalies you need to go in and change. So in a particular, if we're doing a small section, let's say we have 100 items in a 4-foot section, right? Now we go in and we run a suggested order report based on that location code, which is just that one 4-foot section. And once we get that report, it's going to produce it as a PDF on the machine. Then you can actually go in and print that if you wish, go into the aisle and make some changes. So the first thing you want to do is get rid of those items that you no longer have in stock, or they're discontinued. And you can do that by just deleting the item if you like. Now when you delete it, it doesn't actually delete it. It maintains and retains all the history of your sales. That's deleted inventory items as well as deleted customers. We don't get rid of anything, especially if you've created an invoice. We don't want to touch it because we don't want to go back and, if you generate another report from some area or some time in the past, you want to make sure that that's consistent with what it was then as it is now. So it's important to clean these items out. Now you can also identify items that maybe the supplier ratio needs to be set. So if your sold quantity and your order quantity are different, you may need to go in and change that. For example, if you say the minimum order quantity is 10, you buy it by the 10-pack, but you sell it by the each, you'll want to go in and just divide 10 into 1, put that number in the supplier ratio, and then lock in that minimum order quantity of 10. But for retail price and for cost, you want to break that down to the item. So if when you order the 10 and it's say $100, but you're selling them for $15 each, so you're making a little profit on them, you need to actually set it at that sale price and the each price rather. That's very important. And next, to also, if you don't want to delete the item and now you fix the supplier ratio so the ordering's correct, you may want to go in and identify items that you do not want to show up on the suggested order report. These are things that maybe you manage separately or differently, or they're items that were special order items that you do want to retain them in the inventory, but you don't want to see them on the suggested order report. Now, there are two schools of thought on this, or two ways that you can accomplish this. One is you can go in and set your max quantity to 0 and lock it in. That item, if you say, I want a maximum of 0 at all times, it's not going to show up on the suggested order report, right? And also, if you go in and set your minimum order quantity to 0 and lock it in, it's also going to say, well, the minimum order to quantity, or the minimum quantity to order is 0, so I'm just not going to order any. Now, what we suggest and recommend as best practices, as if the item has been discontinued by the manufacturer, set the order quantity to 0 and lock it in. That way you can identify easily how this item got discontinued. However, if it's an item that you wish to not carry any longer, or you want to discontinue stocking it, then you set the maximum quantity to 0 and lock it in. So that is identified in a knowledge-based article, best practices for suggested ordering and for keeping items out of suggested order. And order quantity, locking that into 0, should be items from the manufacturer. And by the way, if you have electronic data interchange with your wholesaler or supplier, oftentimes when items are discontinued, will automatically, or the supplier will automatically lock in that order quantity at 0 if it's a discontinued item. So that should already be done for you if you are you doing electronic data interchange or EDI with your wholesaler or supplier, right? Next, you run the suggested order again and you create a working purchase order, and that's it. You are done. I mean, it couldn't be any simpler than that. This is just a couple hour or less process from start to finish. And if you take that the same method that you did for the first section, you apply it to the second section, apply it to the third section, just systematically go through your store in kind of chronologic order of your location codes. Now, the first day you run your suggested order report, it's only going to encapsulate or provide a suggested order for one area. But the next day, after you continue this process, you'll spread that out to maybe an 8-foot section. The next day, spread it out to a 12-foot section. And over time, over several weeks or months, your entire store can be ordered using the suggested order process. And that's as difficult as it is, folks. We've got, like I say, if I go to the next slide here, I can show you all the different knowledge base articles we have that can assist you in this process, and also the 3 webinars, Unraveling the Mysteries of Inventory Control, Part 1, 2, and 3. And then if you have an RF gun, you're not really sure of some of the features that you can use on it, there is a 9 Functions of the RF Gun webinar that you can watch. And beyond that, we have added a 10th function to the RF gun, which is not listed there, but I believe we have a separate webinar on the subject. But that is actually, the 9th function is receiving items against your PO using electronic data, if you're using the electronic data interchange with your supplier. All right. So are there any questions so far? I don't see anything coming up under questions, so I think we're good. Let's go ahead and just jump out of this and get into the actual Paladin application and show you a couple of these things I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to kind of change my attention here to a different monitor. So in Paladin, if you go into File Setup, location codes are listed here. And the first step you want to do is create some location codes. Again, I would watch the video as to how to set up and design and formulate location codes so that it's going to be easier for you to systematically run suggested order. I've got 3 in here. One's aisle 3, right side, aisle 3, right side, the shelf 2, shelf 3. I don't even know my own system here, but these were just created. I just created these real quickly, and then I also have a yard item in here. Now, once you have these items identified in the inventory in that location, they'll show up here. It says inventory with this location. It shows all this lumber down below here. That is all assigned to yard item. I have a few items assigned to this aisle and a few to this as well. So it really helps you once you use the RF gun or you manually assign location codes to items. It helps you by just validating that those things were assigned to that particular location without running a different report. However, you could run an inventory count list report, which is one of my favorite reports, as you all know. It is an Excel report that shows both the location ID and the location code and makes it real easy to go through and identify. Also, for those that don't have an RF gun and you want to quickly assign location codes, you can do that also using the exporter importer. So you can export your inventory, reduce it down to a certain location, and then you can go into that Excel spreadsheet, assign a location ID, turn around and import that back in, and across the board you can just populate those location codes across all those items. Much easier to do with the gun, but that is an option for those who don't have a gun today. If you, just a sales pitch, if you are serious about taking on full ordering using suggested order, which you should be, just go ahead and order an RF gun. You won't be disappointed. All right, so once you've got the location code identified, if you go into the inventory, we're just going to bring up an item here. Let's go with number 1, a 2x4x8. under the General tab, you'll see that location code goes right here. And again, this is assigned automatically using the RF gun, or you can manually put it into an Excel spreadsheet and force it, or you can just come into the item like this and select the particular location that that item is in. All right, once that's all done, then you just run your report. So we go to Reports, Inventory, Purchase Order, Suggested Order Report. And from there, we identify our location. Let's say I'm going to use yard item as my location. That's the location that I've counted thus far. And up on top, as I mentioned, you set the depth, how much product you want. And this, you can play with this number. You can set it at 14 or go down and set it at 8, rerun it again. You can rerun it 16 times over. It doesn't matter. The only time it matters is when you select this that says create a working PO from this data. We're going to do that in the second step. First step, let's just use 14 days. Let's go ahead and you can sort it as well by multiple different criteria. I'm going to sort it by extended cost, descending. What that does is it raises, obviously, all the expensive items to the top, and I'm going to run the report. Now, at this time, it's going to come out and say, you need 5 items. Here they all are. And here's my total order value, $530, basically. Right? So if this looks good, we're good to go. We can just, close this, go back, say create as a PO, run it again. It's going to create this report as well as create a purchase order, and then we just go ahead and order those items. Now, when you run it the first time in a particular location, you may or may not have, like I mentioned, some anomalies come up, some things that you need to correct. And you can do that, not here, of course, because this is just a report, but you can do that if you create a PO on it. Just let's go ahead and create a PO. I call this webinar test PO. Run it. It's going to create the report, as I mentioned. We'll show that on the screen. Now, if I go to PO, go to recall PO, and I find that PO I just created, which is way down here, and I recall that, here those items are. Now, at this point, the reason why I created PO, and by the way, you don't have to use this PO to order. You can delete it after you've done this process. But if you've got a lot of items that need fixing in your suggested order report, I suggest and recommend create a PO. Just make it a fake PO, right? But the reason I like this is because you can see all the items. You can see the needs analysis, the minimum, maximum, the stock on hand, quantity ordered, and all that right here, right? But what's nice is you can jump to any one of these items by pressing F5. Notice down below it says recall inventory. So I can recall inventory on this 2x4x16, goes right to the inventory page, right? You can make your changes here. Here you can go ahead and you can go, order control. And remember I said you set your max quantity at 0 if you want to have the product available in active inventory but don't want it to appear on suggested order. You would lock a 0 in at maximum quantity. Now, if the item was discontinued by the manufacturer, and all I mean by lock is click on that and it locks it, right? If it's discontinued by manufacturer, I mentioned order quantity will be changed to 0 and it will be locked in. Either one of these, either a 0 order quantity or 0 max quantity, will keep it from showing up on the suggested order report. Very, very key, because there are a number of things that you might have in your inventory that you want to have as an active item, but you don't want it showing up on the suggested order report. So there you go. Another way you can go in and kind of clean up your inventory too is using these dashboards. If you look at non-performing assets and we click on the magnifying glass non-performing assets, it's going to show me either by location or by department what items are not turning, right? What are the non-performers? And you can go into that particular one. Here's yard item, and I can double click on it and it brings up every single item, and I can sort this by overage or by waste, and I can show it by waste as in the in dollars or waste in let's see, overage by number and then waste by dollars, and it's all right here. and I can sort it. So I can say, well, here's some wasted money here. I need to fix that. Well, you can go in and, again, you can also double-click on this, go into that item, fix it up, do whatever you want to do, and then just go cancel that, and it goes right back to that page. Now, that particular feature where you can double-click on these single-line items is in a new release that unfortunately you don't have at this moment. I happen to have the latest release, the latest build that comes off the press here. So I can show it, but it will be coming shortly. Just another tool that you can go in and you can modify and make changes. Also on the product outs page, meaning this is the dial that shows the lost opportunities. If we go into that, we have an opportunity right here to look at how many weeks we've been out of stock. And this is, you don't have to have any location codes in here for this, right? We just need to look at how many weeks it's been out of stock. We'll put it in there by the highest number. Just click on the weeks out of stock, and you can go in and just say, well, click on delete, click on delete, click on delete, click on delete, and you can clean up a lot of those things right here on the screen before you even start the process of suggested ordering. So multiple ways to do that, to tweak it, and to get it right. The important thing is getting back to that particular page that we were looking at here, clean up the anomalies. That's probably the biggest headache and the biggest challenge for people is when they say, well, geez, you know, I ran a suggested order report for my entire store and it wants me to order $120,000 worth of product. Yeah, that's really common, particularly when we're doing integrations or data conversions from other systems, because some of those other systems don't identify what's a special order versus what's an item that's always in stock. You know, what's an active inventory item versus a special order. Other systems, they might have brought the entire catalog into your inventory. Now, we help in that process during that conversion process where we can do a lot of the data cleanup. But it's your responsibility, because there are sometimes we don't want to make the decision necessarily that you don't want this item in your inventory unless it's, you know, you have none on stock and you haven't sold any for a year or two. You know, those are the types of no-brainers that we can say, well, you know, let's get those out of the active inventory and put them into an obscure. That way, if they're found in the inventory somewhere and scanned at checkout, they'll still scan. So, again, guys, I can't stress enough the importance of this particular feature, and stress enough that you should really be using this feature in order to get the optimal stocking supply. You know, that's the reason you bought an inventory control system as part of your point of sale, is because you want to leverage the dynamic algorithms that are in our system to be able to make your life easier. You know, you don't have to spend 14 hours in the store every day now because you're having to massage the inventory or go in and figure out what products you need to do so you're not going to run out. You don't have to go and say, well, geez, I'm going to buy a case of that because I never want to run out again. You know, those are the types of scenarios that you get into problems where your non-performing assets start raising up, meaning all that money you're sinking into inventory instead of sinking into places like, you know, your pocket, your vacations, you know, maybe a store upgrade, adding a new line, you know, and all these types of things. So very important to do this. And on the other side of that spectrum, you know, let's get the higher turns. Let's reduce the outs. You know, it happens to us as consumers every day. We go into a store, we see stuff that's not on the shelf. It's like, why is that not on the shelf? I really wanted one of those. It's a problem. So let's fix all that. I hope you guys have a great day. That concludes the presentation for me. And next week, I know that we have a webinar here. I think I actually have it on the screen here. No, I don't. Chad, do you happen to know what next week's on?
Yes, sir. We are showing people how to put together their next sale in record time, kind of planning for Black Friday and all the holiday sales coming up here.
Oh, okay, that's me. Right. All right. So you'll see me again next week. I am doing it. I'm actually ahead of the game on that one, where I already have the presentation. So, folks, that is going to be a really cool presentation. If you have an RF gun, you definitely want to attend, because, and if you don't, you may want to buy one after this, because I've devised a way that you can create sales using the RF gun. So I used to get the question all the time from folks, hey, I want to just take the gun, walk down my aisles, see the items that I have in, you know, an excess of, and I just want to scan them and put them on a sale plan. Okay, we can do that. We can do that, and you'll have to stay tuned for next week to see how it's done. All right. Thank you, guys. I don't see any questions, so we're just going to sign off. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the day.